So I have an amazing episode for you today. I'm going to be talking to Diane about how she pivoted her consulting business after total upheaval as a result of the pandemic. So we're going to get into that in a minute.
To The Recognized Authority, a podcast that helps specialized consultants and domain experts on your journey to become known as an authority in your field. Here is your host, Alastair McDermott.
And before we get into today's interview, I just want to tell you about my daily email list. I have been writing daily for the last 3 weeks and I've managed to stick to that cadence. I have a daily tip for experts who want to build authority. Give me 2 minutes a day and I'll help you to earn more by building authority so you can command premium fees, work less hours, and enjoy your work more. So don't let an algorithm decide what you get to read. You can subscribe to my email at therecognizedauthority.com/email. So now let me welcome my guest, Diane. Welcome. I'm going to do something that I almost never do. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Diane S. Hopkins, can you introduce yourself to the audience and tell them about where your business was before the pandemic?
Well, happy to. Thanks for having me. I have a long career in combining marketing, innovation strategy, and customer experience strategy, primarily in the healthcare industry. And I switched from traditional employment status to consulting status when I moved back from Indiana to Pennsylvania to care for a sick father. And that's when I had the energy and the impetus to start my consulting company. And things were booming. I had wonderful clients and wonderful steady work in an industry that we know is never going away. Healthcare is never going to go away. And then the pandemic came and changed everything, as you mentioned yesterday, turned it upside down. And in the beginning, as we all did, the pandemic was, we were looking at it saying, what is this? What does this mean? What does it mean for me personally? And what does it mean for me professionally? And, maybe it's not going to take that long. Maybe things will be normal in a couple months. Well, a couple months continued and continued. And my primary client base, which was healthcare, they were dealing with unprecedented pressures. And they knew that they still needed help with patient satisfaction and patient engagement and innovative problem solving, but they couldn't possibly deal with that while they were trying to keep the doors open and the lights on. They had staffing shortages, they had burnout, they had financial constraints. And so the typical work that I was quite happy doing and quite busy with pretty much froze. I stayed in touch with my clients and even new clients who said, oh my gosh, we need you. We need this help, but we just can't do it now. And again, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 9 months, maybe in a year. And so that's been the volatility and the kind of shock that the pandemic allowed me to see.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that felt like. I mean, the kind of the pressure and the slow squeeze as you realize, okay, this is not going away anytime soon. Like, how did you feel at the time?
Well, I think the beginning was, this is no big deal. Then it went to, this isn't going away. And then it went to, this is pretty shocking because I don't see an end. So I guess those were the stages.
Yeah, and so what did you like? Can you tell me what you tried to do to replace the lost income and the lost revenue? Did you go through different stages? How did you progress with that?
I would say I pivoted in phases. So my first pivot phase was to move from traditional providers, healthcare providers, medical groups, health systems, hospitals, to adjacent businesses in healthcare. So manufacturers, device manufacturers, medical supply companies. And that was really great. That really helped keep things going. My next pivot was I had to prepare myself to pivot from on-site, in-person, face-to-face to online and virtual. And that wasn't too hard. It took some, rolling up your sleeves to do your delivery differently. But that was a good pivot to have for forever in terms of how I work and how I connect and how I teach. The next one was to look outside of my industry and outside of my country. And so I started to work with a company in Paris that was a customer experience consulting company, but they didn't have background in healthcare and they needed me for that. So that was my next kind of circle of pivoting to outside the country and outside healthcare delivery to consulting company. And I also pivoted to, during some of the downtime, offering my work as a volunteer for some charitable organizations that would expand my horizons outside of my typical industry, with some religious groups and some government groups. So I'm still learning and I'm still offering, I'm still contributing. So that was kind of the different phases of pivoting.
And how, like, over what kind of period of time was that over? Like, was that over a year? Was that over 6 months? A month?
That was 3 years.
Okay. So this was not a quick thing. That, like, it happened at quite a slow pace.
Yeah, I mean, I had to pivot as clients would say, we have to freeze our contract or, different things. I would have to pivot right then and figure out, okay, I'm not going to wait 6 months to figure out what to do.
How did you, like, where did you get the ideas for what you were trying when you were doing this? Like, how did you, like, what kind of logic did you go through, or how did you brainstorm where to go?
Well, luckily, one of my backgrounds is innovation and innovative problem solving. So what I've been teaching and what I've been applying in business, I applied to myself. And so I used a variety of innovation or innovative thinking tools to figure out, okay, what do you do next? And there's a million of these tools, and so I just started to apply them, and they're pretty intuitive to me now. So it didn't take a lot of time for me to figure out how to apply them.
Can you, like, is there any? I know that that's a huge topic to get into. Could you give us the cliff notes of any of that?
Well, one quick example is to is called stretched thinking, and think about things that you have pushed in the background, they haven't been a priority, and bring them forward and take a good look at them, a fresh look at them. And so the idea of, hey, what if I didn't work in healthcare, which I'd never thought of, it was never a priority for me. And so what if, there's this tool I use called what is, what if, what wows, what works. Very simple 4 steps. And the what is, hey, what is not good. What I've been doing is not working. What if is where I spend a lot of time in the ideation and brainstorming about what if. And then what wows is kind of a higher level, crazy what if. What would be, unexpected completely. And then what works? What can I feasibly do? What connections do I have? What can I get started on next week?
Fascinating. That's something I'm going to use myself. I like that framework. What is, what if, what wows, what works. Very
Correct.
cool. Okay, so you're still in this kind of iterative process of pivoting and changing, and so can you tell us how you finally got to where you are now, and do you feel settled now, or do you feel like you're still in process of kind of iterating?
It's absolutely a work in progress. No settling yet. I do have a kind of a framework that I'm settled with, though. About 1/3 of my future pursuits will be in traditional healthcare, as they're starting to come back, and they're starting, most of my business was generated by referrals, personal referrals, or through my books that I've written. I will always tell you that, especially in professional consulting, a book is a calling card on steroids. And so about 1/3 of my future work will be in that traditional healthcare where I love it. I'm passionate about it. I've got deep experience in it. 1/3 will be about going outside of healthcare and applying all the tools and lessons that came out of my healthcare experience design work that absolutely translate to other industries. And then the last third will be, I've got 3 books that came out, co-authored or authored by myself during this pandemic period. So they didn't get the attention they normally would have because of all the distractions. So that time will be spent promoting the books, the 2 that are already out and one that comes out in a few weeks.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You said a book is a calling card on steroids. Can you dig into that a little bit more? Because, like, I know that a lot of people listening to this are people who can write a book and are thinking about it or have thought about it, but it is a huge commitment of time. Can you talk a little bit more about why you call it that? Like saying it's a calling card on steroids.
Well, there's this differentiation side of it that, when you're trying to build business or reach out to a new client, there's other people doing that too, and they're reaching out as well. And if you reach out with a book instead of just a resume and a calling card, your credibility goes up immediately. Your just the ability to get their attention goes up. And so there's this differentiation competitive side of it, that you stand out. You're able to stand out if all goes well and they start to read your book and they identify with how that connects to their needs. Then you're accelerating your relevancy right there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, once you have a book, that tends to open doors for interviews like this or speaking engagements or other things, which gets you more exposure and so awareness building. So, that's why I always say, if I send you my calling card and, a fact sheet, okay. But if I send you my calling card, my book, and my other thought leadership articles, it really helps your business stand out.
Yeah, I mean, we even have the phrase "he wrote the book in it, she wrote the book on it." It's like it's and I know that this is a bit of an overused cliche, but the word author is the base of authority. So yeah,
That's true.
I
I never
think
thought of that.
yeah, it's and maybe I'm the person who tends to overuse that, but I think it is. It's such like having a physical book. I was at a business event for the first time, actually, probably since the pandemic. I was at a business event recently, and I had copies of my book because I was given a table by the organizers. They asked me to come in and give a talk, and they gave me a table. So I put some copies of my book on the table, and there was a government minister, actually the Minister for Enterprise of Ireland was at this event, and I gave him a copy of my book. And so he took a photo he got a photo with me with the book, and then he walked around holding my book for the rest of the event. It was amazing. It was
You got
like
a little billboard.
it was, and I was just like, it's the power of a book. Like people, there's something I think that people see it as, and they see it as something that has value intrinsically. And inherently, it just has value by being a book. And yeah, so I saw that with this politician wandering around with my book, and I think at the start he was horrified by the title 33 Ways Not to Screw Up, and I'm sure that he processed the title through his politician's brain, and I actually gave him the workbook to cover the book when we took the photo. Because I'm sure a politician doesn't want to be in a photo online with screw up on the. So
Well,
anyway,
it would help him stand out too.
yeah, but yeah. So I love talking to authors about books. Like, do you know, like, can you assign revenue that's come in from consulting clients or high ticket clients to the book directly?
Oh, for sure. I don't so far, although this is going to change, I think, but so far the book is not the revenue generator itself, as you well know. But it becomes the door opening, and it depends on the year. But I would say at least 50% of my income was related to book door opening. The book opened different doors.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
And
Okay.
and you mentioned earlier about the time and sweat and tears to make a book.
Hmm.
With me, and I think maybe with you too, when I have enough topic and enough subject matter inside me that I've either observed or actually worked on, I cannot wait to get it out on paper. I need to get it out and organize it and create this new tool or this new collection of insights. And it doesn't take me 3 years to do. I have to get it out, and so I'm pretty quick. I started my career in news radio in Philadelphia, and when you're doing news radio, you have to take very complex things and get them down to 20 seconds. So that has served me well through my life. And so the energy to get the book out, the research that has to go with it, that's what takes the time. But the the observations and the insights based on real life come out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the other thing, like I mentioned at the start of this show, that I'm writing a daily email, and I find that the process of writing, just writing regularly, really helps me to hone my thinking and develop my thinking on the topic. So I think that there's a benefit there, that it's not just like the sunk cost of writing and creating the book, but there is a benefit there of having the writing process ongoing. So that's something else I think about as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about where you ended up, and how did you get into gift giving, and how is can you describe the whole thing, because I don't really understand it myself, and I'm sure that people who are listening to this are wondering what I'm talking about now.
Well, it's not launched quite yet, but another one of my pivot phases was, there's other things in life I love or I'm excited about or I enjoy. How might I find an intersection between those things and my professional experience? And one thing I've always loved since being a little girl was giving gifts, finding gifts and giving people gifts. And at some point in my, ideation phase of what wows, I thought, I love to do this. And so I started to just kind of poke around and see what was available. And I couldn't find a book that was well rounded about this whole thing. Why do we give? How do we give? Ideas on giving, changes in giving, all the cultural changes and country, different traditions in countries. And so the more I dug, the more excited I got about it. And I went deeply into the research phase. I also do informal research with contacts, colleagues, family, friends, just to get attitudes about, not scientific research, but incidental research on topics. And the more I did, the more I loved it. It was fun. It was exciting. And so that also led to me developing an online course about how to be a better gift giver. And so in about a month, this will launch, and it's called The Gifted Gift Giver. And I'm connecting with some people that are experts in pieces of this, like actually in London, an expert in gift wrapping. And so I'm connecting to a whole new world. It's so much fun. And it was me taking something else I loved in my life or I had fun with and seeing how it might connect with my experience.
That's really interesting. And is this consumer facing, as opposed to the kind of like the business to business consulting you've done in the past?
Yes, it's consumer facing. There is an aspect to gift giving about corporate gift giving, and I am connecting with a company that specializes in corporate gift giving because a lot of the principles of how and why apply to personal or corporate. So mostly consumer, but there's a corporate side to it.
Okay. So how does your business look today compared to, like, in terms of the service offerings and the verticals that you're working in, compared to what it was post pandemic? Can you kind of give me an overview of that?
Well, what I do is the same, the offering in terms of advisory work, consulting work, assessment of the maturity of your customer experience strategy, and training to build internal expertise within a company, small or large. That's the same. The My time is more about finding new clients outside of healthcare because healthcare is still teetering on recovery. And then more of my time is on thought leadership and content development, whether it be on things like the new co-authored book with the company in Paris called Outcare the Competition. That's new content that's taken us the last year and a half to finalize, or the newer one, the new content related to gifting.
Okay, so I'm interested in what you would do differently now if you knew what was coming ahead of you back in with the pandemic. Like, what decisions would you like to have made beforehand, now knowing what you know?
Well, two thoughts come to mind. First would be I would have diversified industries ahead of time. I've done a little work with other industries in manufacturing and insurance, but it was just through connections and it was not a top priority. I would have absolutely made that diversification a priority. Second, I might, although it would have been risky to figure out which company to go to, I might have given up the consulting and gone and gotten to the safety of a business, safety of a regular job that I've had many years. But again, it would have been risky to know which business would have been safe.
Yeah, and so many of them had layoffs, and you
Mhm.
might have ended up working in somebody who was in the same sector. So you don't know if that would have been the case.
I will tell you my observation of all my colleagues and friends who went through the pandemic and their professional, the only category of people that had stability, and very little worry were government workers. So
Mm,
that if in my experience, that was the only place that had less disruption.
yeah, yeah. Um, Interesting. So, what advice would you have for people who are facing disruption? Like, there's people facing disruption now from AI, for example,
Mhm.
and there's a myriad other things that are happening out there. But what advice would you have for people who are facing disruption in their industry or around their
Well,
skills?
personally, for someone's personal benefit for their own business, one, I would say always tend well to your network. So stay in touch with people that maybe can't give you business now, but they're your fans. They've worked with you in the past. They know you, they trust you, they know you're credible. Stay in touch with them, tend to that network. And then I like to say, and others have called me a net weaver. Don't just network. See how you can cause relationships to happen across your network, what I call net weaving, because great things will happen. That's how you and I met, actually. And so make sure that tending to the network and working to net weave, that you continue to do that and give time toward that. Look for silver linings. One odd silver lining from this whole disruption was I was able to have more time to take care of an ailing mother that I wouldn't have had before. And, so take advantage of the disruption to your personal advantage and to your family's advantage whenever you can, and value that. Look at your expertise, your content, and see what you can do to refresh it during that time. The gift of time, even though it takes away some income, take advantage of that gift of time to reposition and reimagine and reframe what you've done and what you've done well, so that when you come out of the disruption, you've got some fresh material and fresh insights. Um, Explore other things you're passionate about, like I did with the gift giving, and see if there's an intersection there. You may never have imagined an intersection with your hobby or with a family business or whatever it might be, but give that a shot, take a look at it, and just see what might come out of it.
Great advice. Okay, so let's see. So just to recap on some of this, you were in an industry, you had a vertical specialization in the healthcare industry, and what you were selling was less important than the urgent firefighting that they had to do, and that's what was disrupted.
Yeah, they were desperate to stay focused on day to day, and even though patient experience impacts quality and safety and all those things, they just didn't have the capacity to tend to it.
Yeah, so maybe calling it a luxury would be wrong, but it certainly was
Yeah, not a
a
luxury, but
it's a
not
non-core activity. Yeah,
non completely foundationally core.
yeah, okay. And so I know that maybe we're mixing metaphors here now. I know that Perry Marshall uses the analogy of bleeding neck. He talks about look for clients who have a bleeding neck, as in somebody who desperately needs your help, and they make for the best clients, the best people to work with. And in your case, the problem was they didn't desperately need what you had at the in the circumstances that they were in.
Well, they
Okay.
all had bleeding necks, that's for sure. But in
Yeah.
healthcare, when you have a bleeding neck, you also have a bleeding budget.
Hmm.
And when you're having, when your core nursing staff are leaving in droves, either because of burnout and the stress of the pandemic, or because they didn't want to be vaccinated, you can hardly keep the doors open. So all these other things And that's also affecting your ability to pay for anything else.
Yeah. And by the way, Karina says, great advice, Diane. Much appreciated. Great podcast. So thanks for that, Karina. Okay, so what you did next was you looked to adjacent industries to see, can you sell the same service to people in the same industry, as in different industries, but just adjacent to where you are right now.
Mhm.
The next thing you tried was taking your in-person services and packaging them up in an online remote fashion. I know a lot of people did that, and it was a smart play. And in fact, that's the reason why I had an incredibly busy 2020, because I was in web design and online marketing, and so I had an incredibly busy time when I know a lot of people who I was talking to were saying, "Oh, I'm bored. We've got nothing to do right now." And I was thinking, like, I'm working, 16 hours a day. So I had over 400 calls in 2020, and most of them in a 9-month period, and all of those were 1 hour calls, or most of them were 1 hour calls as well. So it wasn't like it was a short thing. So very busy for me, because a lot of people were doing what you did, which was go online. Then the next thing that you checked was you tried looking outside, more on outside the industry and outside your country. So you looked to international markets, and you also looked further afield to different industries. And you also did some volunteering. That's an interesting one, and a good way to get experience and network as well. So
Yeah,
that's
and stay
interesting.
fresh, stay fresh with what's happening in other industries. And in most cases, it was very satisfying because they're doing noble work.
Yeah, that's true. And like, I volunteer at my local rugby club, which is like an amateur sports club, and I'm the PRO there. And I know that, just it really helps me stay connected, because otherwise I'd be quite happy to sit in my office and just talk to people online, because
Mhm.
I don't get out and about a whole lot. I don't really like people all that much, despite liking talking to people on
Doesn't
podcasts.
seem like that.
But yeah, no, I get to network with people and meet a lot of people in the local community because of that, and I've certainly gotten business from that. So yeah, I completely agree with you there. Your innovation is very interesting in your framework. What is, what if, what wows, what works, and maybe sometime I'll invite you back and dig into that a bit more, because that might be an interesting one to dig into. And then
I've got 30 or more innovation tools. We could do a whole series.
that would be really cool. Yeah, it's certainly something I think is important for everybody in the experts services space. So then you were talking about the breakdown of your revenue. Let me see if I've got this right. A third from referrals, a third from your existing healthcare, and then a third was coming in from books. Is that approximately the
Oh no,
breakdown?
that was where I was spending my time. That wasn't the money.
Okay,
Um,
right.
yeah, that's moving forward. That's how I'm going to organize the business.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so clearly, and again, just this focus on the importance of long-term content creation, I guess you could call it, in terms of creating books, and by the way, the books, when you're writing the books, are you also doing any element of that in terms of like blogging it or posting bits onto
No,
LinkedIn, or
I
are you?
I I wait for the cake to be baked.
Okay, okay. I know that. Who did I have on? I had somebody on who talked about the process of, basically live blogging a book,
Mhm.
and writing a book in public, as a very effective way to get feedback. You are putting the unbaked ingredients out, but you are getting feedback as you go and building an audience. That's the opposite approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so were there any mistakes that you made along the way? While all this was going on, where you feel, okay, that was, I shouldn't have done that, or I made a mistake there. Was there any mistake or failure that you can tell us about?
I guess not realizing how serious it was earlier. But again, whoever went through a pandemic before? So if I could fix something, I would have rallied the alarm a little earlier to try to fix new things, because I kept thinking, and I must say, my clients kept saying, "Oh, we just need 3 months," So I believe that.
Yeah, they didn't know either, and they're
Correct.
they're trying to be optimistic. Yeah, yeah. Um, Interesting. And so I guess that's the danger of optimism as well. And so I am an optimist. I think I'm an optimistic realist, but I am an optimist.
Yeah,
So
I am. I think I'm the same. And one thing you just reminded me that I forgot to mention was when you have this disruption and maybe some downtime in your typical flow of client work and assignments, take advantage of training. I think I did 4 webinars a week, mostly in healthcare, but in non-healthcare, there, you in your email box, you get invited to how many webinars, a day. And so I just went at them and got smarter by each one. I took some, other classes online. And so some of it you'll never use, but you're getting smarter, you're stimulating your thinking, and that one thing leads to another, and you never know how that will benefit your company.
mm, great advice. And if I was talking to people during the pandemic who did have that downtime, and like I thought it was a perfect time to get into content creation. You know,
Mhm.
buy some video equipment, some audio, like a decent microphone, and start a YouTube channel or start experimenting, figuring out that kind of thing as well. I think that's a great way to go. I don't know if that kind of situation is going to happen again ever, but if it is, then I think that's a good way to go with it.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about authority. What is the number one tip that you would give somebody who wants to build authority?
Write as much as you can, wherever you're comfortable. Take the thoughts on the concepts and the observations that you've got inside you and get them out. They're not doing you any good sticking inside you and staying in your brain. And you may, there are times when you have self-doubt that is this effective? Is this valuable? You won't know till you get it out and start sharing it. So commit to time to do that. And if you're not a typical writer and you're worried about writing, partner up with someone who can get it out of you.
Great advice. Is there a business book or resource that's been important for you?
Well, one of my mentors who I've had the pleasure to meet a few times and work with his company is Tom Peters, the wonderful business, #1 business author. And his latest book is called Extreme Humanism. So Tom has shaped much of my work and much of my thinking in my career. His current book is Extreme Humanism. I would definitely recommend that. And I'd recommend any of his books to get you to stretch your thinking, to be much more creative while staying practical at the same time.
Love it. And what about fiction? Do you read any fiction, or do you have a preferred TV or movies?
No, I read mostly nonfiction, but I guess the thing most recently I've been on was Yellowstone. So
Yeah, that's a great show. I've been enjoying that too. Awesome. Well, Diane, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
go to Expeers, EXPEERS.net, and you can see mostly my healthcare stuff, but you see the books and you can contact me through there.
Super. And all of those links will be in the show notes in this episode. Diane Hopkins, so thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to chat to you, and like this is a really super interesting story. So I appreciate you coming on and kind of giving us the whole backstory and talk about the tough times that you had.
This was great, and it's my last show or appearance for this wonderful, crazy year we've been in. And so I wish you the best for a profitable and exciting 2024.
Awesome.